A number of libraries across Canada have reported threats and intimidating messages recently. They're focused on events that feature people in drag reading aloud. The CBC's Jonathan Montpetit is covering this story, and he joins me now from Montreal. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. So can you give us a little bit more details on the types of threats libraries are experiencing?
Yeah, so I've spoken with representatives from 7 libraries so far who've confirmed receiving just a large volume of hateful comments and threats. Now, these are libraries including in St. John, Dorval, Quebec, Pembroke, Pickering, Whitby, Orillia, and Calgary as well. Um, the, the hateful comments take a number of forms. Many times it's a deluge of comments on Facebook pages. It can also take form of email to library staff. And in many cases, there have also been threatening phone calls to the libraries themselves. These phone calls have involved threats of various types of violence. In Dorval and in Pembroke, police have opened investigations. But in general, what the kind of campaign has in common is people using slurs against the LGBTQ community, implying using baseless accusations that LGBTQ people are somehow more involved in sexual abuse. This is, of course, a long-running stereotype trope, and and so these comments that these municipal libraries have been receiving in some cases by the dozens.
And now I know you've written extensively about this online on cbcnews.ca, and I urge our viewers to read that, but more is there. Can you tell us a little bit about the individuals or groups that are behind these threats?
Right. Yeah. So I think before I do, I think it's important just to point out one thing. That these events, these drag story hour events, aren't new in Canada. Many of these libraries have hosted them many times before, for several years running, with a little to no controversy. So something is different this year, where the volume of hateful messages has ratcheted up. One factor we can point to is the political context in the United States, where a lot of far-right groups have been targeting drag story hour events during Pride Month, physically disrupting them in some cases with protests. And of course, conservative and Republican politicians in the United States have often pointed the finger at these events as part of the so-called culture war. In Canada, what I noticed is that many social media accounts associated with the Freedom Convoy have been pushing their supporters and members to call these municipal libraries hosting these events, and to express their criticisms and disappointment.
Thanks for this, Jonathan. That is Jonathan Montpetit in Montreal. So to continue this conversation, we are joined now by Alex Saunders in Summerside, Prince Edward Island. They are a drag performer who was targeted for hosting a drag story time with the St. John Free Public Library. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
So you are a drag performer. You sometimes volunteer your time dressing up in drag and reading to children, but you were targeted in doing that. So what's been the experience for you?
Well, leading up to the drag story time, we didn't really hear anything at all. And we usually only run one. I've been running one drag story time during New Brunswick's Pride Month, which is actually in August because it's too cold in June to do parades and stuff down here. So we didn't hear a whole lot leading up to, and then Heather McKind, who is the children's entertainment coordinator at the library, said that she had gotten a couple of calls and that a man had come in and physically ripped our poster off the wall, which was all fine and good. And then we had no incidents at the actual story time. And then all of a sudden afterwards, we started getting a lot of negative feedback to the library. Like, people were calling Heather and screaming at her on the phone. And we found out later that it was actually a local political candidate had put up some misleading information. And that kind of started the ball rolling of people from all across Canada. Like, the library got calls from people in Red Deer, Alberta, who I'm sure have never been to New Brunswick. So just people from all started kind of harassing the library, which then, of course, got bigger and bigger the more that the misleading posts stayed on social media.
You know, Alex, we heard from our reporter that these events aren't new, having drag performers do a read aloud at a library, but this sort of response really hasn't been received in recent years of this sort of an event happening. Why do you think it's happening in the way that it is now so intensely?
Because our people in Canada often look down to the States for how they should act and things they should do and things they should get mad about. So this is in Texas, they're trying to make it illegal for drag queens to read to kids as part of drag story time. So this is just, I think, them jumping on United States politics bandwagon, really. And I'm just I'm just standing in the road in the way, I guess.
How did you and other volunteers feel being sort of, targeted in this way?
Well, I honestly at times couldn't really figure out why it was happening to me, like, because I think humans really look for the meaning in everything. It's one of our best and worst qualities sometimes. So they had just decided to, I don't know, they just decided to do, I am at a loss for words on the regular as to why, but I went through the 7 stages of grief for like this anger, bargaining, and then it all culminated in like an I don't want to leave the house meltdown, which I'll be honest about. And, sometimes that stuff gets to you. And then after I was done melting down and feeling my feelings, I decided to come back with triple the resolve that I have. So a great thing about my family is we're all really, really stubborn. So unfortunately, they're going to encounter another stubborn Saunders that just won't go away. So that's how I'm feeling right now.
And Alex, how has the community responded to the reaction to the story time?
So a lot of my local queer community and even communities all over Canada now, because I've done a couple of news things about it, the love has overshadowed the hate in such a spectacular way. I can't even really put it into words, but it was like as soon as people started attacking me in these comments, saying stuff like burn it being me, and burn it with fire, things like that. I just had all these people come out of the woodworks to defend me, people I'd never talked to before, people I wouldn't know from a hole in the ground, things like that, just totally in support of what I'm doing, because I'm not sure if the rest of the country is aware, but New Brunswick has a whole bunch of problems in regards to literacy problems with children and stuff. So some of them need all the help that they can get, and some kids just need to see that there's other types of families out there because they don't really feel included. So the overwhelming response from my own community has been so just fantastic and overwhelming, and it really makes me feel loved, and it really made up for every person that felt it was appropriate to say that they wanted to light me on fire on Facebook.
Alex, I have to say I'm sorry that you had to endure that. That's nothing that anyone should have to face, those sorts of comments. I did want to ask you, though, if there was any comments, positive comments that you received from parents or from children that you wouldn't mind sharing with us.
Absolutely. I had one fan say that she brought her son, who's came out as bisexual really early, to one of my shows, and he had actually started to go back into the closet because his peers at school were making fun of him. And he saw me up there being proud and bisexual and talking about how cool it is. And all of a sudden, this kid came right back out of the closet. I've had so many conversations with everyone from parents of trans children to venue owners that don't know the difference between drag and trans, because there's definitely a difference, to outreach of drag performers in our community that are starting to identify as trans or non-binary. I'm non-binary myself, so the more representation we can get, the better, really.
Well, Alex, thank you for sharing your experience with us here. We appreciate your time.
No problem. And I just wanted to take a second, if you'll let me, to point out that drag has been influencing children for years. And one of the reasons I started doing drag is because Robin Williams, as Mrs. Doubtfire, told me that it was okay to have a family where your mom and your dad don't love each other anymore and your family is split. So while it looks, I guess, maybe offensive to some that I'm out there reading to children and stuff, if I could just inspire one kid the way that Robin Williams inspired me, then it's all worth it.
Thanks again, Alex, for sharing all of this with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Arthur. You have a good day.